Good afternoon. We're going to get going on the tax increment financing study and formulating committee meeting. And so the first thing we've got on the agenda is the December 7 minutes, which Mr. Warren's going to tell us about that for a second.
Yeah, my notes have got to be so old, I'm going to have to go back and watch the videotape in order to do them justice. So we're missing that, but we've got the minutes of the last meeting.
All right, so for the ones for the 7th, we'll save those to the next meeting. We do have minutes from December 20 that were in the folder online, and there's copies at the end of the table. I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved. Second.
All right, if there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we adopted the minutes. The next thing on the agenda is really the big thing for today is discussion of why tax increment financing is considered necessary. And today specifically we're getting perspectives from the private sector. And we've got a panel discussion that I'll moderate where we've got John Cannon, Ray Hensler, and Larry Papel. And if you guys just want to give a 1-minute introduction about who you are, where you work, and the perspective you bring, maybe a couple minutes. Then I'll dive into some questions, and maybe we can start with Mr. Cannon.
Sure, yeah, my name is John Cannon. I lead the commercial real estate finance group for Pinnacle Bank. I've been in the finance industry for about 25 years and utilized the TIF program a number of times to help as a supplemental finance vehicle for projects here in the city.
All right, thank you. Larry?
Larry Papel. I'm an attorney with the Nelson Mullins law firm. Practiced law in Nashville since 1980, so not quite as much as Mr. Warren has been established before. Been involved in commercial real estate most of that time. On the developer side, lender side, borrower side, have dealt with TIF since the 90s, I would say, in many different projects for many different reasons, as lenders counsel, borrowers counsel, developers counsel, or even as a partner in developments with, among others, Mr. Hensler.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hensler.
My name is Raymond Hensler, Hensler Development Group, and been developing in Nashville for 17 or 18 years. Primarily mixed-use high-rise projects. I've had experience with TIF. I've done projects without TIF, and I've done some projects that have had TIF. So got kind of a...
All right, thanks. Well, I've talked a little bit to, I think, each of you about the idea that we've covered a lot of ground in this study group so far as the basics about how TIF works. And one of the things that I wanted just as a refresher for people who might be viewing on TV, it's available online. There's a document we discussed at the beginning of December that we call the Tax Increment Financing Flow of Funds. And just I wanted to, we don't have to go over it a lot today because the group's already been through it, but the basic notion that a lot of people aren't aware of, that MDHA receives the loan proceeds, disperses that to the developer. Once the project is built, real estate taxes are charged. The full real estate taxes are charged and paid by the developer, collected by Metro, and then Metro delivers the increment, the new revenue, back to MDHA, who makes payments on the loans that it took out at the beginning of the process. And we've been through that flow of funds, and I'm just going to leave that up on the screen while we talk, because I want to make sure you guys know that we've had that basic knowledge. And then one other thing to keep in mind while we're talking about this is one of our main focuses has been the idea that while tax increment financing since the beginning in Nashville has been on a parcel by parcel basis, there is substantial thought about having TIF districts, a transit-oriented development district where the increment for an entire district would be collected by MDHA, even though only a subset of the district would be under development and be the recipient of the loans. And so sometimes I'm going to ask maybe for clarification, that we're talking about the way it's been up till now versus what might change if we go to district-wide collections of the increment. So with that background, I wanted to start first by just asking briefly, what do you all consider to be the purpose of tax increment financing? And I guess we'll start with Mr. Hensler for that.
Okay, take a stab at that. And I guess I can best explain how I've used it and what purpose it's had related to our projects. But I think
the room's a little bit bad sound-wise, so we'll have to speak up a little bit. We're good with the microphones for TV, but for the folks, it's a little bit hard to hear.
But the TIF has in our case been available or been utilized in a way that's allowed us to, I think, help the city with infrastructure that either was not able to be done prior to a project, being ready to go, or is either just larger than what a particular single development could take on. And so the TIF has been a vehicle for us to do that infrastructure, not have it make the project, burden the project to the point where the project doesn't work, and allow us to get it done and then get the city paid back through the increment of the project.
Okay. And John, what's your take from the lender perspective about what the purpose of TIF is in Nashville?
Yeah, I'd kind of a similar approach. I mean, it's a vehicle that helps projects happen and get financed that have an element that benefits the broader community, that has a cost associated with it that, to Ray's point, may not make sense on a standalone basis.
And Larry?
I see it, I've always viewed it as an incentive tool, incentive to the private sector from the public to do something that might not be done either at all or not to the same scale, which also provides infrastructure, but the infrastructure allows the greater scale too. So I see it primarily as an incentive tool, and I think that's what it was designed for originally, and should play that role.
All right, thanks. Now I want to shift more specifically the developer perspective, and then talk about what goes into decision-making for lenders a little bit down the road. You mentioned infrastructure. Can you give some examples of what you're talking about so people can make that more concrete?
Sure. We had I'll just use an example of one that we were involved with in the Gulch, but the Gulch, as I think a lot of folks know, there was infrastructure that the city took on. I think MDHA tackled that 10, 15 years ago in order to stimulate activity in the Gulch and change the way the roads were laid out, sidewalks, and also buried a bunch of overhead lines. And at some point you have to stop and let the market determine whether or not it's going to follow that path, and indeed it did. I guess about 2011 or 2012, we were, I think, one of the first projects to in the new cycle to get started, and we had an overhead line issue that we wanted to try to address. But by the time we got dug into it a little bit, it wasn't just a few $100,000 that we would have probably taken care of and just moved on. It was by the time NES finished looking at it, it was it was touching 6 or 7 blocks, and the cost grew to about $5 million. And so in that case, we reached out to MDHA and were able to work it out to where we took that obligation on, but our project had already actually moved forward, so it was not part of our capital stack. It was just something separate that we did, and the developer guaranteed the loan, managed the project, and actually took on, I guess we had cost responsibility. If it had been more than $5 million, we would have been on the hook for that. Mm-hmm. And then that loan got paid back very quickly. I think it's maybe just down to a few $100,000 now. So within, I think, about 4 years, the loan got paid back, and it really cleaned up 6 or 7 other parcels that now have a duck bank in the road, don't have overhead lines, and so those parcels are able to more quickly and more cost effectively just move forward and not be, stuck trying to deal with a major infrastructure project.
Yeah, that included the W site.
That's right.
By the way, which is under construction now, but that work was done in advance.
Can you give us other examples of the sort of infrastructure that TIF helps with?
Usually it's sidewalks and utilities. Not so much roads. Metro does that on their own. They're really boring infrastructure things that might not be in Metro's budget.
So, and let me back up a step. So as I understand it, the developer wants to do some project, and Metro requires certain infrastructure work to be done along with it. Is that right?
It could require larger water connections, larger pipes, water main, natural gas. Electrical is always a big thing because capacity is an important part of when you go from a 2-story, 5,000 square foot building to, like Ray's talking about, a 23-story, 500,000 square foot building. The draw is just different, and you may not have the infrastructure there to make it happen. So somebody has to pay for it somewhere along the line.
Right. And one thing I hear out in the community sometimes is, well, the developer needs that in order to build a project, so is that really a public cost or is that a private cost?
It's both, because sometimes for the one development to have it, it takes, like with the electrical in the Gulch, that serviced 10 or 12 other owners. Why should one developer pay for all of that? Infrastructure is primarily a Metro obligation. But if it needs to get ahead of what it would otherwise have in its capital spending plan for that, this is a way to do that.
Well, I think to Larry's point, like with that project, given the magnitude of the cost relative to our development, we would not have been able to, again, our capital was all put together and it didn't have $5 million to bury overhead lines for 6 blocks. So we would have just put the lines back where they were, and you would have had this spaghetti strap. You have not just electric, but you got AT&T and Comcast and everybody else, and so that would have covered John Aiken's building. It would have gone by the W Hotel, and it would have, and we would have, as a part of our project, we would have put in some sidewalks, repaved the streets. We would have done all that. So if then later the city wanted to, somehow found the $5 million, you would have been ripping up, all basically new sidewalks and new asphalt. So it is a tool, and it allows for a very efficient, it allows for an efficient way to address those things that maybe aren't in the capital budget and won't be in time to sort of be in front of the development that's coming along, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And this is going to maybe get a little wonky, but I want to take a stab at it. You've mentioned a couple different times that the building in the Gulch, that you had your financing in place, and if there wasn't a TIF loan, you just would have left the overhead lines or put them back where they were, and not incurred the $5 million. As I understand, that's not typically the way it works. Typically, the TIF loan is part of what you refer to as the capital structure.
Capital stack.
The capital stack. And specifically, as I understand it, it typically counts as owner's equity portion, and maybe, Larry, you're in a good position to talk about how it usually is part of the capital structure.
It is considered in the most generic fashion as equity. But if you're going outside of what the developer would ordinarily have to spend for that project, then it, like with Ray's case, that didn't go to the equity in his capital stack. The capital stack was complete. This was in addition to that. It was really an accommodation, really,
Right.
to all parties.
But even if it had been, let's just do it the other way, okay? Let's say we had known earlier, and we just the timing, because it was probably a timing issue as much as anything that didn't cause it to be in the capital stack.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, if the project weren't 100, but if it's $100 million without the $5 million, okay? And let's just say we're borrowing 70 and we're putting $30 million of equity in. You have 30 and you have 70, and you have $100 million, and that's what the project costs. If now we've got this $5 million for, neighborhood-wide infrastructure, yes, the project cost goes to 105, but you have a TIF loan for 5, and so essentially everything else just remains as it would have been. So it's not as though we're getting some benefit of that because it's in the capital stack, because it's all still going to expenses that are infrastructure expenses that aren't. In other words, I'm not using it to put in countertops or to pay for my roof or those sorts of things. It's eligible expenses that are documented and ultimately have to be accounted for with MDHA.
But it's not free either.
But I think you raise a point, because if I could tack on to my first answer about what's the purpose of TIF, first thing I would say is I think it is a tool, but it's evolved, because I think 15 years ago, nobody wanted to build anything in downtown. And so, developers needed help. And I know, the history of TIF in Nashville has been that I think there was up to 10% available of your project cost, and then you had to build affordable housing. And so, everybody was probably confused about the math of how that worked as either a benefit or not to the developer. But, and then I think there's been some projects that have gotten TIF, and it's been part of the equity, and there's no requirement to do anything other than build the project. And I think that would be way out here. An infrastructure TIF loan would probably be at the other extreme, and then some of the other ones are maybe, just depending upon what you're trying to incent and whether that incentive is needed, fall somewhere in between.
Right, so depending on whether it's true equity or hybrid equity, that would be, in Ray's example, it'd be hybrid, because somebody needs to guarantee that TIF loan. It's not free.
We'll get to that. I want to talk at length about that, but I want to save that to the lender part of the conversation.
Underwriting.
All right.
So you just alluded to the changing over time about maybe what the purpose is, and whether that's good or bad. It does seem like it's changed a little bit over time. Let me ask this from the developer perspective. What do you do to get a TIF loan? Where do you start? Who's the first phone call?
Well, first of all, you try as hard as you can not to have to get a TIF loan, and not just to do a project. I mean, we've done probably the Adelicia was an example of a project that Larry and I were involved with, where we developed that, and we didn't seek TIF, we didn't feel like we needed TIF, and built the project. In the case of the Gulch infrastructure, as we determined and were told that we couldn't just spend a couple $100,000 and remove the lines, and that this thing had arms and legs that were growing by blocks and leaps and bounds. At some point, I had to call somebody at MDHA, Joe probably, and say, hey, do you guys have anything, and do you have any plans to do this, and where's the capital budget? Can we expect this to happen in a time frame that allows us to just not worry about it and move on? And then when that wasn't the case, then we started talking to somebody, I think in the mayor's office, the previous administration, and MDHA, I can't even remember, and I just said, hey, is there interest in this project? And would you like us to work on it and manage it and try to get it done? And there was, and so that's kind of how that unfolded.
And so we've been in our previous meetings, we've been naming names just to get out there. Like, one of the things that I think a lot of people in the public talk about is that it's opaque about like how to get stuff done, and so when it comes to like talking about the previous administration and who you talk to and who you call, to the fullest extent possible. I think it is helpful for the public to know, like, what do you have to do to get a TIF loan? Is it in writing? Like, where do you find it? Because those are things that maybe we need to improve, maybe we don't need to improve. So, Larry, I know you've been at this for a long time. Do you have a perspective on, whether the answer to that question has changed over time, or has it stayed consistent?
I don't know that it's changed that much. It's always been It's administered by MDHA. There's an application form that's on the website for everybody to see. There are guidelines there for everyone to see. That hasn't always been online, but it has been, how long, Joe? 5 years or more? But 15 years ago, no. You had to go ask for it. But there was a balance between the mayor's office and MDHA, and I think the perception was it took both. But the political will came from the mayor's office. Either the mayor directly or the primary staff members, deputy mayor, political director, whoever it was, you had to go make your case.
Right. I know we've talked offline about going as far back as late 80s and 90s. What was the situation at that point?
I mean, the first TIF loan I ever did was for the Hilton Hotel, and that was in the mid to late 90s. And it was following a failed developer's exercise. Remember Mr. Covington, who made all those headlines? He wanted to build a 400-room, very tall Marriott with 9 or 10 stories underground, and it just didn't work. He had no capacity to do it. It was a bad design. Bredesen was the mayor, and he went to an RFP process to identify some folks who actually could get a project done there. And we put a group together with Turnberry out of Florida, and the mayor's office chose that group, and then we went and negotiated the TIF loan, because that was dead downtown at that point. The arena didn't exist, the stadium didn't exist. Broadway was something totally different than it is today. So it took some incentives to write down the land cost, and we ended up with $6.2 million worth of TIF. But that was negotiated with the executive director of MDHA, Jerry Nicely, and Phil Bredesen directly. They were the decision makers. Joe, you were involved in that. It was not very difficult to do that. And they were difficult. It was a difficult project because you had underground garages, you had air rights for a public park, you had all these things that were unique at the time, so it took some real drafting and legal to get it done, but the TIF loan was pretty easy to do, and it paid off in 8 years, 7 years, something like that. But that's how it was done then. You went to the mayor and Jerry Nicely at MDHA, and they either said yes or no. Later on, variations on that based on the personalities in those two organizations.
Okay, and let me shift a little bit to, so tax and grant financing happens in redevelopment districts. To have a redevelopment district, the area has to be declared blighted. From your perspective as a developer, what's your sense of what the issue of blight means to getting a loan, if anything?
I'm probably not the most qualified person to speak to blight and the definition of it, and how they determine for the how they draw up the redevelopment district and the eligibility for TIF.
Yeah.
I think blight's probably in the eye of the beholder of a lot of people, and especially as we look around our city right now, we just see a lot of things going on in a lot of places that you wouldn't expect it to, and so it's not a topic I feel like I'm an expert on.
Fair enough. Let me ask. Go ahead.
I have 2 questions, and
Sure.
just based on your experience, I heard one of you say that the project could not be done without TIF. And so the question for some lay people is, if it could not be done without TIF, is it worthy of being done? And the second question is, there is a national network called Anti-Displacement that's looking at cities, and Nashville is one of the cities. And among the things that are being considered is it seems that our approach to TIF is very, very ad hoc. That, a developer comes and doesn't matter where it happens, when it happens, how it happens. And would it be any different or better if there was some kind of a more systematic approach or policy or plan or some predetermined objectives that we wanted to accomplish by utilizing TIF? And it can be for any three of you based on your experiences.
I think the first question really.
Yeah, I think I
yours.
raised the issue you talked about. Really, it was the but-for argument. Would the project go forward but for the incentives? Are the incentives necessary to incent the developer to do the project? That's a political decision, very much.
I'm not sure how I understand how it's political.
To make the incentive available is a political
Yes.
decision. And a developer either gets a yes or a no, or maybe it gets a yes, but not for as many dollars as it requests or thinks it needs. Well, then the project might not get done, just for financial reasons. If you want to tie other goals to TIF, well, that's political too, because that's adding requirements, perhaps, to the granting of a TIF loan. And
Yeah, I would just add to what Larry said. I think that as we said earlier, that political decision has changed over the years, and I think we could all look back, and if we had a picture of what downtown looked like before you guys started the Hilton, I mean, it's clear that whether that was the catalyst or that and a couple of other things were the catalyst, clearly a lot of things have happened and have been really good for the city as a whole since then, and it's impossible really to go back and say, well, what if, would that a project have been? And so it's a political judgment of whoever the people that are in
That's
charge
right.
of the politics, and ultimately they're held accountable, just like I think Carl Dean probably, the convention center could have turned out very different, and the bet and the gamble to build that convention center, we could all be looking at it and going, where is that guy? Let's tar him and feather him. But I don't think a lot of people feel that way when they look at, how it's energized our downtown, and I think these decisions are kind of similar, and the hurdle to get the TIF loans, as I said, has really evolved and changed, and I think gotten a lot higher, because there is a sense that you don't need to incent development, and I think my expectation would be that we would mostly see infrastructure-related TIF, going forward, unless there was some special
I'll
circumstance.
give another example. Since Ray mentioned the new convention center, I was on the Chamber of Commerce intercity visit to Portland. I think you were too, Larry. And they kept talking over and over again about, we built this new convention center, but it's way away from where the hotels are. And we tell people we can run buses over there, but these meeting planners don't like that. And so their convention center was not doing well. And so we did get the Omni built with some TIF incentives, and then other people started looking at building hotels. They could build limited service hotels. Those were easy to finance. A full service hotel is a very difficult thing to finance. And so what a good bit of TIF money went into going to people who said, I want to build a 4-star, 5-star hotel, and say, will you sign a room block agreement where you will offer discounts to people who come here for conventions? Because the Convention Visitors Bureau said, we can't get the kind of conventions we want with limited service hotels. If you want to get a bunch of surgeons in here, they want to stay in a nice hotel. And it's very difficult to make those numbers work. And so the hotels around the convention center, the full service hotels that agreed to sign room block agreements, got TIF money. The JW Marriott said, we don't want to sign a room block agreement. They said, then you don't get any TIF money. And so that's an example of how you incentivize somebody to do a different project. They probably would have built an hotel, but it wouldn't have been the hotel the Convention and Visitors Bureau was looking for.
And nor would it have occurred on the schedule that
That's right.
needed to occur.
And I think the important point, which I had that question near the end of my stuff, but I'm glad you asked it, Paulette. What I'm hearing is that if we take the development community at its word that XYZ project wouldn't happen without TIF, or wouldn't happen the same way without TIF, if the market doesn't like it, why should we like it? We hear a lot of talk about let's let the market do its work, and here we are interceding with an incentive, and the question of is that worth doing, which is what you asked. I think that's one of the things I would like to be able to get when we move on to deciding what our recommendations are going to be. Making sure that it's not ad hoc, and make sure it's not perceived as ad hoc, and there's goals and metrics in deciding whether we're meeting them, rather than the perception sometimes of it's just whoever's the next deal to walk in the door.
And I would add, I'm not on the committee, but I would leave some flexibility on changing what you're trying to incent, because things changed. 20 years ago, when we were doing the Hilton, nobody thought about inclusionary housing. Nobody thought about gentrification. These were not issues. The issues of the day were we had a decaying downtown, and they wanted to incent development that would increase real property taxes, drive sales taxes, and promote additional development, which, even looking back, were fine goals for the time, but they might not be fine goals today because things have changed. And so whatever comes out of this, I would maintain flexibility because the times change. We don't want to get back to where we have outmoded goals that don't fit the policy anymore.
And I would add to what Larry said, that the times change, and also, you want some flexibility, because if you have a certain amount allocated to a district and you have different infrastructure related items that are out there, which just come in all kinds of forms, and you really want somebody who's in power today to be able to look through all that and say, well, where are we going to get the most bang for our buck? We don't want to give you X dollars just because it's for something that's entirely related to a specific area. If there's another opportunity to use those funds that maybe has a broader purpose and touches more people.
Well, and to that, in the example you gave on your project, right, that Larry acknowledged, was you laid the infrastructure there, which has allowed these other projects in the vicinity then to be able to go. The question ultimately, whether it's MDHA or the broader community as a whole, is where can the government invest $1 and expect to get a 5 or a 6 or a 10x return on that dollar? Mm-hmm. Can I ask one question too, following off what you and Paulette said? Councilman Mendez articulated a perception with some that with TIF, all you got to do is just sign it, and all you got to do is just sign up and come over to MDHA and get your allotment and go on your way. Is that the perception of the development community, or is TIF really, really hard to come by, and is there a high standard that you got to meet to qualify for it?
From my perspective, TIF's very hard to qualify, and you better be ready to make that case and show how you're going to get that positive leverage that you're talking about. It's not just going to be to your make your front door nicer, but it's going to have a broader purpose and enhance other goals that the city has, whether it be pedestrian traffic or greenway traffic or overhead lines or the like.
So I had 2 more questions in this segment, and the last 2 comments.
I didn't mean to preempt those.
No, you guys have hit on my last 2 questions, but so I want to ask directly, again, channeling what a lot of people feel. Like, a lot of people will look at the Gulch or South of Broadway and say, come on, man, like, they're awesome now, like, no more TIF there. From your perspective, and maybe you are more familiar with the Gulch than Sobro, but from your perspective, is there a need still in those 2 areas in particular?
Well, I don't think there's a need to just incent development, because clearly development is looking for sites, looking for projects, but I think there's a need to continue to be able to continue to be mindful of where infrastructure needs improved and is really beyond what any particular single developer is going to take on, and they're just going to sort of move along, and maybe they're out-of-town developers, they're just trying to get a deal done, get it sold, move on. They don't really care what the longer-term impacts are, and so, again, it's, as Larry said earlier, I think, for the city or for MDHA to have have those tools in the toolbox so that when presented with something that's compelling, you have an opportunity to address it, I think is, definitely worthwhile. But again, at the other end of the spectrum, just plugging holes in capital stacks and giving developers money to go spend on, parts of their project that are really not having any public benefit whatsoever. I mean, I think those days are over. Certainly in the core. There could be other areas of outside the core where that kind of thing might make sense, but.
All right, and the other one, which sort of goes to what Charles Robert just asked about, I wanted to ask you, Larry, when somebody's interested in a TIF loan and it doesn't come together, that's another thing where nothing ever really surfaces publicly about that. Like, how does that go?
Usually, if it's not going to happen, the developer is dissuaded from going forward.
By
MDHA or the mayor's office or both.
and what's the universe of reasons that
Don't
no-
need to incent. Don't need to incent is the usual response. And, that's not always put in writing, but it can be discussed. And whether it's worth putting an application in or not. If the deciders have told you don't bother, you don't bother.
From the perspective of developer's lawyer, if you get dissuaded and you're given a reason, is it your experience that feels like full description, or do you not know what the real reason is?
You might not know, but there's no appeal. It's a political decision.
Yeah.
And what about the developer that doesn't have access at the beginning to have that informal conversation?
Relationships help. I can't tell you that it always matters. It doesn't. But sure, relationships help.
Are there any suggestions for how, I know relationship building is very personal and what have you, but are there any other criteria that might be brought into the consideration that have nothing to do with relationships? I'm a developer, and I filled out the application. I've got whatever it takes. Can I just get an objective up or down decision?
Probably.
Might ask Joe to. We've had several that have come in. They're generally the smaller scale projects.
That's what I'm talking about.
And they have come in essentially not knowing anybody. One of the prime examples is a townhome project on Dickerson Road. They just kind of came in out of the blue and said, hey, we want to build residential over here on Dickerson Road. And filled out the application, and it was awarded tax increment financing. So we do get those out of the blue.
In that example, was the mayor's office involved?
In that example, no, the mayor's office was not.
And I'm going to look to the video, guys. Is what Mr. Kane said recorded, or is that volume? Okay, great, thank you. Then let me ask this question. Just, as a percent of dollars of TIF loans awarded over 10 years, what percent would be walk-in off the street?
Very small percentage. There's no question. Most of the projects are larger scale projects that we have done in cooperation with the city as a whole.
All right.
Fifth and Broad being the single biggest one that was done.
I think you're going to get into this in the next segment, but TIF loans are not cheap loans to do.
Let me get into that with Mr. Cannon. You're a banker. So most of the conversation that happens around TIF with the general public comes from the perspective of the loan part is the easy part. From your perspective, can you let's start with making TIF loans something that your bank is actively trying to do?
No, I wouldn't say we have an effort around pursuing them, but we do consider those, and we do finance them from time to time. But it's certainly an outlier to traditional, traditional bank finance.
Do all the banks in town make TIF loans?
I can't speak for the rest of the banking community, but I would say there's a subsegment that does and a segment that does not.
Yeah. Larry, you have any insight about?
That's correct. Not all banks make a market in it. Some do it as an accommodation to commercial clients. And some, well, when they have let's say, if John's doing the $100 million loan and there's a $5 million TIF loan, might just line up another bank to do it, just to keep it separate. You see that from time to time, and some of the regional banks are tending to make more of these loans now, as opposed to the national banks or the super regionals.
There are 65 banks, I think, in Nashville right now.
65
Yeah.
banks in Nashville.
Yeah.
But they're not all active with,
Right,
or
in
have
real
not
estate,
been.
income,
Yeah.
so,
That's right.
You were saying only 65?
right.
So, John, I want to talk about some of the nuts and bolts. When you make a TIF loan, do you have collateral?
Not the real estate collateral. The thing with this vehicle that has been attractive to banks is, these terms will surprise you, being attracted, to a bank: predictable and somewhat controllable, so underwritable. And by predictable, I mean, the value is pretty easy, relatively easy to quantify via an appraisal process. Based on that incremental value, the increment produced is formulaic. So, we can get to what generally should be available to pay back the loan and what that payback period is. And then the other piece is somewhat control related, and you'll find different approaches from different banks. The way that I've approached this, I prefer to be in the senior financing when I do a TIF loan, because it adds a layer of oversight and predictability and control over funding and seeing that the project that creates the value is done. So we tend to be on both sides of that equation, because we're controlling the funding, we're inspecting the project, and controlling that value is being created. The other thing that's attractive about TIF in particular is it's not really dependent or beholden on a lot of things outside of our control. It's based on the value of that particular project. So there's not a lot of other variables generally to have to underwrite.
And so, as opposed to a loan somebody might get on their home, you don't have any rights to get the real estate.
Right.
With the TIF loan. What you've got a right to, and you don't have any rights to make Metro pay, right?
Right.
And the sole rights are to get the increment above and beyond what the property taxes were before development.
That's correct.
I might add, and in some cases, I would suspect you have guarantees for that loan, so as well as the stream itself, the developer or some entity might be standing behind guaranteeing that loan.
I don't know that I've ever seen one done that didn't have a guarantee.
I would agree.
I was going to be
cases.
pissed if they did.
Which goes to the point that these are not easy loans to do in very small cases, because those guarantors may not be there, or at least not sufficient in net worth to satisfy the lender.
So you can't get money from Metro, you can't get the real estate, you're relying on the increment tax funds to pay the loan. And the next question was going to be, if the project is a failure or doesn't generate the expected increment, what are the bank's options in that situation?
Our recourse at that point is, to pursue rights and remedies under a personal guarantee.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Pursue our rights under a personal guarantee.
So everybody I've ever talked to has said every situation has a personal guarantee, and that's from the principles of the developer?
Typically, yes. Generally from the banking perspective, ideally that you want the project completed, the value created. So that guarantee is most meaningful, one, for someone that has the resources to honor it, but two, the person that has the ownership and the control of creating that value, which tends to be the principle of the development company.
And in a situation where you've gotten a guarantee, but the project has failed and the guarantor isn't worth it anymore, and so the guarantor can't pay, as I understand it, the bank will just keep getting whatever the increment is until principal and interest are paid at some point in the future?
That's my understanding. I haven't had that situation in my underwriting.
I think or until the district
Expires.
Until the
district
district expires. So if the
That's
district is, yeah.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Do
Yeah.
you have any questions about the expiration of the district?
Go ahead.
That's a real big issue with citizens and the whole notion of just the optics. And I know those are not decisions that you make, but the 30-year, I think most of them are 30 years.
Right.
And then they're renewed. And it seems like many of the renewals are almost automatic. And we can use like the Gulch or downtown as prime examples. From your perspective, it's almost like it's interminable. I mean, it's a forever kind of thing, even though there are these limits. And at what point, or what needs to happen so that there is a better feeling or a better understanding of why they last, they're so enduring?
Well, let me ask a couple questions that get to that. So, from a bank's perspective, if there were 7 years left, making up a number, on a redevelopment district, would that make a difference in your underwriting for a TIF loan?
Well, it could, depending on what increment is projected to be generated, and would that pay our loan back in 7 years? And I don't know that there's a particular rule of thumb of a cushion beyond maybe a repayment period and expiration of a TIF, but I would generally like to see some level of cushion there just for unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at, is this TIF district around long enough based on the projection to repay the loan?
And either one of you guys have something to add to that?
That's basic underwriting. And yeah, the lender's going to make sure there's plenty of time because there have been TIF loan defaults where the guarantor was not there to meet its obligation. And some of those can extend out for 10 or 15 years. The good thing about a TIF loan is your collateral is tax revenue, and that always comes first. In some ways, that's better than having a deed of trust on real property because taxes prime the deed of trust. So you're going to get paid. It may be a negative amortization for a period of time, meaning the debt grows because the interest is more than the increment, but you're going to get paid in time.
Assuming the district doesn't run out.
Assuming the district doesn't go away on you. That hasn't happened yet.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
To Paulette's question. I mean, obviously things look a lot different today, politically and development-wise, than they did 5 years ago when some of these districts were renewed, or 35 years ago when some of these districts were created. But ultimately, I think it's important to understand that's a function of the council who approve. I mean, it has to be approved by MDHA, but ultimately the council has to approve the district, the term, and then ultimately the renewal that was done for several of these in 2014.
I mean, I personally would give that a yeah, but I mean, yes, there is a piece of legislation approved by the council creating a 30-year plan or extending it for another 30 years, but I would say, I think, without exaggeration, that given the way the politics of the city have worked over the last 40 years, that's mostly been mayor's office, whoever the mayor's been, pushing that, and I'm not sure the council without professional finance staff has the ability to say, well, 25 years would be good enough. But yes, definitely the council has approved it. And Paul, I mean, I know it's sort of drifting off asking these guys questions into our long term, but I've entertained, I'm sure maybe there's going to be a reason why it's a dumb idea, but I think that lenders need a certain cushion in order to be able to make the loans. But I think that we could tweak the way the districts work so that we could make decisions periodically about whether new TIF loans should continue to be available. So anything that gets, a loan that gets made in year 7 of 30 has got plenty of cushion, but maybe we could decide, like every 5 years, we're going to decide whether to keep making new loans in the district, and that would bridge the gap between making it so lenders could make the loans comfortably, but the elected representatives could decide periodically about whether to keep making new loans in a district.
I think my point, I think that's a good comment. I think my point is a little bit different, and it's sort of like consideration might be given to once the 30-year development district is defined or established, some periodic review process may be something to consider. Like you said, it may not be a good idea. There may be prohibitions legally, et cetera. But it goes back to the point that Larry made, that things change.
Right.
They change even more rapidly than 5 years, but that's just a number that's thrown out there.
Well, I'm going to guess that our study group is going to probably agree about some sort of periodically reassessing what happens prospectively. It'll be important for the tool to even exist that once a loan is made, that there's a high degree of confidence that the district will for at least for that loan, last.
You can't retroactively change the rules.
No.
All right, I do want to ask about underwriting. It's been referred to a few times, and just for folks who are watching, because I think a lot of us in the room know what that means. What is it? What do you get from a developer to engage in underwriting? What is it that you all are looking at during the underwriting process?
For the TIF specifically?
Sure.
There's really a TIF analysis done of the value creation, and then an application of the tax rates to that value creation and the increment that it then provides. And then we compare that to the debt level requested, and when does that kick in and how long does it take to repay that debt.
Now, when you talk about value, you assess the value creation. What do you do to do that?
That's part of the analysis that's generally provided by the development company.
So you'll get a pro forma, and you've got people who will look at that and decide whether they believe it or not believe it, try to poke holes on it.
Whether that value creation is legitimate, and if it is, then the rest you just kind of follow the bouncing ball with the tax rates and the increment produced, and compare that to your loan repayment requirements.
Think about as-built appraisal. That's a more common term.
Right.
Because Metro will appraise the as-built operating property and assess it, and then the tax rate goes against that, and that's the numbers that the bankers use to determine
And
what
so
they
you
can
look at the assessed value of comparable projects that are already built. If there's a 20-story office building across the street, and you're building a 20-story office building, you assume it's going to have a value somewhat similar to that once it's.
But as John said, I mean, the TIF loans aren't made in a vacuum. They're made as a part of a larger project and a larger loan, and so you're already getting everybody comfortable that there's going to be a value creation proposition, and in some cases, and like John's case, he's already decided over here with this loan that he believes the value is going to be at least X, so it's not a stretch to to just underwrite the TIF loan as a part of that. But even if you weren't, you would use the same data, same things provided by the developer to the construction lender to get the TIF lender comfortable.
So let me just push a little bit further on that. So to get basically as-built appraisal, what is the information that you provide to a lender for that?
Well, it depends on, whether it's a condo project or an office project, but I mean, if it's, let's just say it's a multifamily high-rise, you have your budget that, you have your plans that have been priced by a contractor, and so you know what it's going to cost. You have a cost basis, but then everybody's doing this to make money, not just cover their costs. So, there's also rental market surveys and market comps that you come up with to be able to peg where you think your rents are going to be once you build the project that you have on plans. And then there's another, on the exit, from the standpoint of determining the value at the end, you're looking at cap rates and other things that appraisers look at to get comfortable that you're really going to have the delta between your cost and what you expect the project to be worth at the end.
And so what Mr. Warren mentioned a minute ago about if there's a similar kind of building that's already built, you look to see what that's appraised at. My impression is that might be a rule of thumb way of doing it, but a lender would look at all the information that you just described.
That's how appraisals do it. What similar properties is one approach to appraisals, and likely to win the day in an appraisal in that situation. An appraisal is a financial exercise subject to rules.
But bank's not making an underwriting decision off of getting what an appraiser says. It's making a decision off of looking at all the information that Mr. Hensler just
The
described.
appraisal is part of it. John should answer that.
I would say one validates the other.
Yeah.
So, a developer will provide a budget, they'll provide their rent projections, and then we'll dig into that and we'll look at comparable rents. Can this project get the rents that's in the pro forma? We'll look at comparable sales and say, okay, or is there an active investor audience paying, the price that we're expecting, and we'll develop our own conclusion of generally what that value creation is going to be, and then the appraisal is ordered. If we're comfortable with that from a project level standpoint, then an appraisal is ordered that generally validates that.
All right, thanks. All right, I want to shift to, I've mentioned a couple of them, but when I get around the community, there's criticisms that I hear, and I'm just interested in, from your perspective as lender, developer, lawyer for both, what's your take on it? So one criticism is, we've touched on this a little, is that it's an insiders club. You got to know somebody, and if you don't know somebody, it's probably not going to happen. Agree, disagree?
I don't know that I really have a thought on that. Is it, the deals come to me after they've already been generally, approved. So.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody at MDHA before. I might have known Joe a little bit, but I just think it's really a merit-based process. You're either bringing something in that the city, from a public policy standpoint, wants to see, and it fits the bill for what kind of things they're wanting to take care of, or it doesn't. And I don't think there's any special lawyer you have to hire or you have to be a part of old Nashville or new Nashville. It's just it's you do have to go see somebody and you have to work through the process, but there's not it's not just available to us at a certain group of people.
I think one of the things we sometimes lose sight of is this tool now is typically used on sizable projects, and there are only a limited number of developers that are doing those types of projects, and so they tend to look a lot alike. And it's not that one is the mayor's best friend or hire the mayor's favorite lawyer, favorite architect, or anything else. the mayor has got something they're trying to accomplish. I mean, it may be build a bridge at 31st Avenue across the railroad track to try and tie West Nashville to North Nashville. And if a developer comes in and says, I've got a great project that would fit right into that, then you're way down the road on getting your project approved. And I think John will tell you that these developers do tend to look a lot alike. I mean, you have to be fairly well financed. You have to have experience. There's just a lot of things that John's checking boxes on, and so they wind up looking a lot the same.
And for a period of time, too, if you go back and look at the TIF loans of the last 12 or 13 years, you can see a sweet spot in there for a period of time where there's a lot of downtown residential developments, because that seemed to be a preference of at least one administration or others, starting with a period of time of saying downtown needs more residential units, site costs, et cetera. It's hard for that to happen, but you can tell that as you kind of go back and look at each of those projects, I think kind of Richard's point.
And the transactions are complicated, the loans are complicated, so there's a lot of cost to doing a TIF loan. So I think to your point, that's another reason you see them tend to only be used for larger projects, because no matter who you are, you would go, oh my gosh, that's too much brain damage. There's got to be another way.
And to that point, as we talk about recommendations, and we've talked the last couple of meetings about how we put some of those on the table, given this discussion and where we are and what we know about downtown and the Gulch, I think what this committee has to be mindful of is how can we break down some of those barriers, whether it's size, whether it's administrative, whether it's cost, et cetera, that would allow these tools to be used in other parts of the city, other parts of the county, that it's not so prohibitive where only those with a project of a certain size that can bear and absorb the cost of that complexity. I think that's kind of incumbent upon this group and MDHA and others to begin to figure out how you can do that potentially at a smaller scale.
There's a great story I heard one time, and I don't know whether it's all true or not, but
Well, we would never let that stand in the way.
I heard at one point that Mayor Bredesen, when he was faced with downtown that was, not doing well and kind of languishing and was trying to get things going, that he got out a magic marker and, drew part of Sobro.
He tells that story.
He does? Well, then maybe I heard it from him. But I think, the point of that story is that he drew a magic marker around a certain area of town that he was trying to get going and wanted to incent folks, and he didn't really care who came in with a project as much as come in with a project. You actually ended up
We were in that magic marker.
You were in that magic marker, and so I think to your point, Charles Robert, I mean, that philosophy could be exported to other parts of the city. And if, there are toolboxes that the politicians that are in control of that have, then, it's a way to get things going and create a little critical mass. And then at some point, the city can pull back and allow things to, happen on their own.
And that's exactly the expectation and the dismay that many citizens have, that it is not occurring, it has not occurred, and there aren't many indications that it will occur.
Well, I think I've always wondered how, it's always seemed to me that being limited to doing these things in redevelopment districts is just is bad policy. Just because there you could do the same thing in smaller ways in other parts of the city. And
But that's a state law issue.
That's right.
So right now, Metro can only work within the state law.
So I think the next two criticisms I have, I actually have other questions I've picked up. One of them was if the market, like if we're so excited about markets doing their job, if the market doesn't like a project, why should we push it forward? And I think we had a good discussion about that's like people in your seats look to the political deciders and they either want to put their thumb on the scale with incentive or they don't. And then I wanted to talk about the difficulty with small projects. The two things I've heard through the course of the conversation, just curious whether you guys have anything to add to it. One is that because the transactions are more complicated. It creates additional cost, and with smaller projects, it's hard to bear the additional cost. And then the other thing I've heard is because there's not going to be a loan without a guarantee, then you need substantial net worth people to stand behind it, and that tends to be bigger projects, not smaller projects. Is that fair?
It's fair.
Fair
Loans are
description.
not creatures, they are creatures of scale, but the cost doesn't vary that much depending on the scale. For example, a $500,000 TIF loan on any kind of commercial property isn't going to cost much less, if any, to do than a $5 million TIF loan. The documentation is the same. So the costs are out of scale sometimes. The guarantee is the guarantee. A developer of a very small project, maybe it's a small retail center in one of the districts that's maybe a $2 million budget or something, and it's just not going to make sense to pay the cost of the TIF loan for what you get out of it. And then the developer may or may not be able to stand for the guarantee. So and the lender needs to have it because the risk on a small project is greater. The risk of failure is greater than on the larger project. So that's why these incentives don't always scale. And there are a lot of other reasons. I'm sure Joe could give us 50 reasons why these things are hard for him to underwrite and get done. I don't see many of those. I just hear about them from time to time. I've been involved with some that just say, I give up, it's too much to do, we'll go get our money elsewhere. And often that's the best business decision to make.
Well, let me ask a similar kind of question. I think Richard used a phrase, and I don't think he quite meant it the way I'm about to take it, but he used a phrase that these developers tend to look alike. And I don't think he meant.
He meant financially.
He meant financially, but it's a criticism that I've heard that it's more than just financially, that the people who get them are like white guys, basically. And any ideas about how to help with the diversity of who gets TIF loans?
That's a tough one. If Metro doesn't want to provide part of the guarantee, or to subsidize the loan costs that go with it, then the successful applicants are going to look alike financially. And that may be more white guys today than others. But you've got to deal with reality too.
Is there any, I'm asking you all now, and you as a lawyer, is there any restraint on MDHA being the guarantor on a TIF loan should it choose for some reason?
I don't think there's a restraint on that.
I mean, I'm not opening, I'm looking at Joe. Joe, don't kick me.
No,
Right.
there's nothing in the statute that prohibits us from guaranteeing the
But it
loan.
would be a sea change in policy.
And then it is, what is it that we're pledging? Because we have our silos and we can't pledge this towards this.
Right.
So we would only have a limited source of unrestricted revenues that we could.
Yeah. What if there's a default? Where does
That's why it'd have to be only a limited amount of resources that we could pledge.
Okay, this is an aside, but isn't that what he just described, the model for RAD, pretty much? And we don't have to go into a big discussion about it, and I may have an incorrect understanding.
Well,
if it is not, then that's fine.
RAD, we are getting loans that are putting the property up
As collateral.
for collateral.
Exactly.
But that's property that MDHA owns.
Yes, we cannot put the property up as collateral for TIF loans.
What is
There's
RAD?
prohibition on that.
The rental assistance.
You don't own it.
Envision Casey.
Right, we do now.
Just guys, for the
For that.
camera, let's try to just
Not all talk.
run the conversation for me.
I think maybe the difference is RAD is on a piece of property that MDHA owns, and the reason it's not the same is that these TIF loans are to third parties, not to MDHA. So,
And a bank already has
well,
collateral.
so you are incentivizing a third party owner separate and apart. So the beneficiary, well, the city is the beneficiary of whatever the ancillary improvements are. Somebody, a third party owns it. Whereas in the RAD process, MDHA is the owner of all that property.
Sounds like maybe there would have to be a funding source to MDHA to create, just in theory, as we think about how this could, like, that could then be on hand to provide a guarantor and
TIF loans are considered conduit debt to MDHA. They do not show up on our books because we are not guaranteeing.
It's non-recourse.
It's non-recourse.
conduit debt.
We report them all into the comptroller and everything else, but it pops up as conduit debt.
Well, this is a great topic, but I want to move on. After saying one thing, I mean, the idea of figuring out whether there's a way for a governmental entity to help, I think is a good thing to explore. I would want the government side underwriting to get to be as good as Pinnacle's underwriting.
And that's it's kind of my thought process. If in a hypothetical world, MDHA or any government entity ends up being a guarantor in some situation, then you've aligned your underwriting interest with what you're underwriting to say as MDHA, hey, this is a loan that makes sense, this is worth it, et cetera. But now all of a sudden, if you have to guarantee it, you've completely aligned your interest with your underwriting, because today all MDHA has to say is, yeah, this is a good loan, this makes sense, this accomplishes the objectives within the redevelopment district, but we have no recourse.
It's a totally different product, because you're going from an incentive to something way more than an incentive. You're going to an underwriting and a guarantee project, and then that would take, I'm sure, a rewriting of state and local laws to do. Could be done, but it's probably a different product and a different statute that enables it.
Well, let's put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
I would like to talk
Lots of
about that.
ideas on that.
I do want to ask you guys, so one of the things that you can hear us wrestling with is what's the amount of increment that we want allotted, so Talia can figure out how the budget's going to work, and how do we make choices between, has Sobro had enough and now we need to move on to somewhere else? How do we balance, the needs are going to exceed at any given time what the city is willing to do. Any ideas about, from y'all's perspective, how to set the goals and to measure it so we're using the tool to the maximum benefit?
That is so hard a question. I didn't come here prepared to talk about anything close to that, Bob.
Yeah.
I was thinking about TIF as it's enacted and how it's implemented now and in the future. You're talking about public policy.
Well, and the answer might be all three of you say, you guys figure that out, tell us what the rules are, and we'll go build some stuff.
Well, and there's a lot to that, because developers, lenders come to Metro knowing what the rules are, or thinking they do, at least, and they become expert at implementing the programs that are enabled by those rules. And with that comes relationships. People have done these deals for 30, 40 years in some cases. Comfort, knowing that this is how they're going to get done, so they're not wasting their time, energy, and resources in pursuing them when it's appropriate. knowing what kind of audience they're going to get from MDHA and the mayor's office and those who work there and underwrite for the city. There's comfort in knowing the rules. That's why rules, when they change, really change a market very quickly. It's not always bad, but it changes the market. What you're suggesting is really legislative and mayor leadership. And, it's just beyond what I came here prepared to talk about.
That's fair enough. You guys on board with Larry's answer?
Absolutely.
Ask your committee members.
Well, so I'm going to ask.
We're here to learn from you, Larry.
I'm going to ask the committee members if they have any other questions, but before I do that, you guys, anything else that we haven't hit that you had on your mind coming into today that you want to share? All right. Anybody, you guys have done a great job of asking questions as we go. Anybody else have anything to ask?
As active practitioners in this process, are there any improvements that you think could or should be made?
There can always be improvements, Paulette. I don't have a list for you today. I didn't come here thinking about that. But yeah, the process could be more accessible to applicants. It could be more open in a government openness way. I'm not suggesting it's not, but
I understand.
it could be made more accessible to folks to see how it's done, how it's approved. Certain things can't be, financials that are submitted can't be shared with the public. They're submitted with an expectation of privacy, and that should be respected, certainly. So it can't be totally open, but sure, the process could be improved.
I would say from a financing perspective, a lot of the things that we're talking about and potential improvements or changes would occur before it gets to the financier. But I will say from a banking perspective, it's a very straightforward product that has been successful, and there's not a lot of things like this that are that way. So it works well, and once the allocations and the decisions are made, it's been a good tool for the finance community to get arms around.
Great.
I do have a question. We just had a ceremonial signing this morning for the mayor getting approval from the Metro Council around providing opportunities to small and minority businesses. I think I heard in one of the prior presentations from Joe that DBE participation is often included in these proposals, but there's inconsistent kind of monitoring and reporting out regarding that participation after the loans are granted. So I guess I want to just, if there's not a way necessarily to go down this other path that we've been talking about, can either of you speak to any particular comments or things around DBE in your projects?
Usually there's a requirement of a percentage of DBE, and
The problem, though, is I think that there's not a lot of monitoring to make sure that that is.
that may be, I've seen reports that are provided on I don't remember if it's quarterly or monthly, some periodic basis on a form that MDHA provides to the developer, and usually the contractor gets involved too, because the subs are a big part of compliance there. And some hire experts to do the compliance reports. I've seen that a few times too, because it's not that easy to do.
I just think it's really important that if someone says they're going to do it, there's a mechanism in place to make sure that there's follow through.
The one project that
reporting out.
we executed from beginning to end, there was the requirement, and we implemented it, and I know that when we were going through the bidding process, that requirement meant that there were a lot of subs that just couldn't participate or weren't qualified because they didn't understand the reporting requirements and weren't prepared to document and do the things that they needed to do. And so at least from our perspective on the one project that we had, it worked, I think, as it was intended to work. And I can't speak to what monitoring went on beyond my field of vision, but it seemed like it was being handled the right way.
If a goal were 20% and at the end of the project, or it turned out to be 10%, what do you think should happen?
I haven't seen that result. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think, just depending upon the project, I can just imagine things get complicated. If a sub doesn't perform, you got to replace the sub. There are lots of moving parts, lots of things going on. I'm not really sure what should be done, but I could see how there, in the process there are challenges that would not allow you to necessarily be at 20% every single time at the end of a job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely drastically up. I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think it's just a rules and compliance thing. If that's the policy, fine. That's how the loans are approved.
Anybody else? Questions? All right, thank you so much for coming today. We'll probably got 15 or 20 minutes more of other stuff to talk about. You guys are welcome to stick around or go about your business.
I'll take that as a threat.
My second prize is 2 weeks in February.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you so much. It's very informative.
I just picked a city. Could be anywhere.
We'll give them a sec to go.
Thank you. Good to see you again. Thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
We talked about
Mr. Chair, good committee, good panel.
Thank you.
Really,
They did all the work. All right, thanks, Mr. Cannon. Appreciate it. Next thing is discussion of future meetings. When we met last, we talked about the 23rd, and by the way, I made a mistake on the agenda. The agenda says the next meeting is on the 25th, and that's absolutely positively not right. The next meeting is on January 23rd, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Back here, we're going to fix the online. Brian's going to fix the online agenda, so it says the right date, but it's the on item 6 where it talks about the next meeting. It's got the wrong date. It's 23rd. When we met last for the 23rd, that we talked about ideas for panelists. That is about what are the current and potential impacts of tax increment financing on housing affordability.
The thing I'm most interested in, and I'm not going to be here.
Well, we could switch, right?
Yeah,
we could swap. There's no.
Okay, let me just, well, I would like to be here. I typically, when I miss, I watch it. It's not the same. So if it could be switched, I would be most appreciative.
Have we lined up any speakers?
I've lined up one, and then the person who I'd like as a second one can't make it on the 23rd. Eddie Latimer has agreed to participate. Somebody from Elmington Capital will be here. The top person will be out of the country that day. And then I'm working on the third person. I got some contact information.
Is Hunter Nelson the person you're talking to at Elmington?
Correct.
Yeah, he's on the Housing Fund Board, and he's very good.
Yeah, and he's out of the country on the 23rd.
So maybe if we move it, it'd be better.
Yeah. Now, we don't have February dates picked yet, so let's just skip ahead to picking the February dates. And then
Okay, let me just say one thing. I have a project now, and typically I will not be available except on Mondays and Wednesdays, particularly for February. And I don't know how that's going to impact everybody else.
Come on, Paula.
Sorry about that.
Mondays are not good for me, so please find a Wednesday.
Okay.
All right, well, I want to try to make it predictable, so we're doing the next one's on a Wednesday, so let's try Wednesdays.
Okay.
Sixth?
The 6th.
I look good on the 6th.
I just got a court hearing switched to the 6th. I can do the 6th, but not at 1 o'clock. Can we do 3 o'clock that day on the 6th?
Okay with me.
I can't.
Yeah. And then,
That one's great for me.
excellent. And then 2 weeks after that is the 20th. 3 o'clock on the 20th?
Those are Wednesdays, right?
Yes.
They totally disregarded my problem, but anyway, no problem.
I thought you said you were available Mondays and Wednesdays.
I said I'm only available Mondays and Fridays.
Oh, I thought you said
I said
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I said Wednesday, I meant Friday.
Wednesday.
We were doing this only to accommodate you.
Yeah, that's
No.
All right.
Okay, can we go back?
Let's try.
Yeah, well, I wasn't because I was going to say I'm, like sour grapes, but I'm glad I did. No, I'm only available Mondays and Fridays, typically.
Let's
Okay.
try February 8th, 1 o'clock.
That's fine.
Anybody?
I'm good. 1 to 3.
I am currently great on
All right. February 8th, Friday, 1 to 3. February 8th, Friday.
So is that going to cancel out the 6th?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
That's all right.
Good question.
And then the Friday, February 22nd, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Good?
that. Today.
Exactly.
Friday, February 22nd, 1 to 3.
Put that out. Put those on your
My
calendar.
65th birthday.
Oh,
So I may not be here.
I thought you were only 30.
Cake.
All right,
I hope to look like Charles Robinson.
so
Take that as a compliment.
let's try to take that affordable housing and that we were going to do on the 23rd and move that to February 8th.
okay.
And then that would mean, and I'm going to keep working on Eddie, somebody from Elmington, and a third person, a smaller developer. We talked about some names last time. I've got contact information. I'll keep working on that for February 8th. And that'll mean on the 23rd, we'll try to stick in the what is transit-oriented development and what role should TIF have. Which means we need, we got 12 days to figure out speakers for that.
You did that backwards? So the 8th. Oh, okay, you're right. You can't do the 23rd.
Did you give any further thought about public comment?
Yeah, and then we have to talk about public comment, and we were going to try to do different time of day, different location for public comment. I think we've talked a couple times about trying to do that. Maybe that's the. How about the beginning of March for that?
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
So can we do that for deliberation, or would there be 2 rounds where?
I think we probably have to do it before deliberation. Let's
Yes.
figure out a day that we're going to try to
Somewhere in March.
have a public comment time.
We'll probably move to the council chamber for that.
Yeah, I think council chamber makes sense.
Do you want to, if we're going to do it multiple times, do you want to do it for an hour, a couple of different times scattered around?
That's a pretty good idea.
And we talked about making
Instead of
sure at
this
least
meeting.
one of those was after work hours
After work hours, yeah.
Just do 2.
or before.
Or a lunch.
Or morning,
Or a
afternoon, and
lunch
after
hour,
hours.
just something that's
would be free.
accessible for.
Well, how do y'all feel about for an evening time one, Wednesday, March 6th? I mean, I can't unilaterally get the council chamber. I have to check with some folks on that.
That's okay with me.
All right. I will run with exploring that.
Did you want me to try to get this room for February?
Please do.
Okay.
Would that be like at 6 or 7?
I think 6 or 6:30 are probably the. I mean, you do it too early, people can't get there. You do it too late, people don't want to go. So I don't know. We got members of the public here. What's the 6:30 for public comment in the council chamber? Just what's your shout out times?
6:30.
6:30 is fine, because that's usually when council meetings are.
6:30 it is. All right. All right, back to January 23rd. What is transit-oriented development and what role should TIF have? We need ideas for speakers. I really like the way the panel discussion format went today. Let us cover a lot of ground, hopefully a little more interactively. So who comes to mind for that topic?
There were a lot of people we heard from on that affordability and TIF thing, and I guess just trying to think. I don't
Bring in Syracuse's.
Donaldson, yeah, they've been active. Ooh.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
I think since Councilman Syracuse was thinking about it for his district, I think that's
It's entirely
a
appropriate.
good person to talk to. I think we need somebody technical, because if part of it is what is transit-oriented development, we need, not that,
Bring in Bland?
sure, that's a good idea, Steve Bland. And then who would be,
Somebody out of town
That's what I
would be
was
really good
wanting
at
to
doing
do.
this.
Someplace who's successfully implemented this.
So, I mean, there's a really good project in Austin. It's been finished now for several years. If we could figure out how to video conference somebody in, I could work on that.
Charles Robert will pay his airfare.
He said.
Well, I was
he
thinking
would.
that MDHA might, in all seriousness, be able to, as a part of that, if appropriate.
Well, I'll take this on as homework and see if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can figure it out.
let's explore video conferencing, obviously, first, if we can figure that out.
Okay.
I know it's expensive, but you get a lot more out of having somebody in the room. You know, it's just-
All right, so that's, Brian's going
Yeah,
to check
I'll
into that.
take that on.
It's short notice, it's 12 days from today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great idea to have somebody, that was your idea, right?
Brian, there's another guy that I know that did some stuff in Denver that works at the National League of Cities now.
Okay.
That also might be good.
Okay. Do you want to check with them and?
Yes, let me remember to do that.
All right, so Brian, will you mind checking with Steve Bland?
I'll do that too.
And I'll check with Councilman Syracuse. I think that would be a great lineup. I'm happy to continue trying to be moderator person.
I think you do a good job.
All right, sold.
And you have a lot of questions, so there won't be any downtime, dead space.
I could trade you the minutes if you.
I'm just trying to channel my inner Oprah. All right, any new business? All right, great. And then again, the last item on the agenda has the incorrect date. We're meeting on January 23rd, not the 25th. We will correct the agenda that is available online.
Before we adjourn, I got 2 questions in.
Sure.
That I
Oh,
want to
great, thank you.
Like I did last time. So the first question was, how do you market your development agreement for diversified business goals, and what % of African-American businesses participate? And the answer.
Was that from Talia?
It was not.
So the answer provided to that, MDHA makes referrals the list of DBE contractors, which include those registered with Metro and the state. The list includes small minority and women-owned businesses. The developer must submit a plan and demonstrate outreach to DBE prior to beginning construction on a project. Of the last 9 projects, MDHA has invested $16.5 million in TIF, resulting in $29.7 million of work by DBE firms. The second question I got was, what enforcement mechanism do you have? And if no enforcement, why not? And the answer provided is the development agreement is the enforcement that requires the submission of the goals, as well as a final report itemizing what actual dollars were expended with DBE firms. And then there were 2 other comments. One was make reports available to the public, and the fourth point I guess here was we need more transparency from MDHA and the governments. That's all I got.
Let me just ask about the DBE stuff. That information, I'm wondering whether, maybe you guys do a great job of advertising the results, but I would pose that as a question about whether it's, especially if they're great results, it sounds like that's something we could talk more about. And then it sounds like the mechanisms that are in place have matched what Metro's policies have been generally. And so that sort of begs the question of, with the new law that just came in place, is that going to shift MDHA practices on DBE participation?
Yeah, and I think the question too is not just for MDHA, but some other organizations that are similarly situated is, can they piggyback off of the same study?
Exactly.
I think previously some organizations have, but I'm not the lawyer for MDHA, so I don't know the answer. I'm not opining on that. But I think certainly MDHA would want to mimic what the city is doing to the greatest extent possible. I think the question is, what process do we have to go through to get it there?
All right. Well, you can leave that for.
That, those results, was it 17 and 29? Or
That sounds about right.
Hang on.
It was out of the tax increment funds that we invested, we got almost twice the amount of DBE work done, because we typically are investing a small amount into the project.
Right, can you send me those numbers?
And we're asking them for their goal of 20% on the total project.
I'm sorry?
We're asking them for a total
Can you send me those
goal of
numbers?
20% for the project.
So
And
the
we're
TIF
usually,
might be
and we're only
10% of the
in,
project.
we're only in for about 10% of the project for TIF. So we're actually, as far as the city dollars are going in through tax increment financing, it's almost a 2-to-1.
16 and a half of investment from MDHA, resulting in $29.7 million work.
For what time period?
This was the last 9 projects.
Is that planned work or actual work?
That's work.
Actual work.
Well,
That was the result of the reports that come back to us at conclusion.
and these things always beg more questions. Like one of the questions that I think would be interesting for the presentation is what was that percentage?
It's about 16.
It's about what?
About 16 is what we achieved.
16%?
Of the 20.
Of the total project,
With a goal of 20.
with the goal of 20.
And are these projects completed or in
Yes,
process?
these were the ones that were completed, that
Okay,
we've
so we
got
didn't
the
meet
actual,
goal.
we had the actuals back.
Okay.
All right, I think that is it, everybody. Thanks very much. We will be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.